respond to the, yeah.
Which is the gap. Yeah.
I think it's here.
What an altar.
I think you might. I'm not. If he's a bubble, it's probably fully charged.
Oh, it's this one.
Okay, guys, let's start.
Good idea.
Okay, so I just want to be very clear here. We have day-long discussions, 5 day-long discussions on here. It's that complex. We are just looking at the surface now. The only thing I want you to get today is that the observer and the observed and to be aware of it. Because you cannot do any dropping or anything. That is not going to happen. That will still come up. You can't be all me like Krishnamurti, right? It's not there. You just want to look at the operation of the mind by looking at it yourself, rather than Krishnamurti telling you or some of the guru telling you. Because you have a supercomputer brain, you can look at it yourself. Right? So let's look at this video in which Krishnamurti is talking about the observer and the observed. And you can see he's going into different sections of being free of fear, observing the fear. What is it? Fear arises, and when you're listening to his thing, look at it as a mirror. Don't bring other words into it. The only thing you are looking at it is how do you observe fear. nothing else. All the ego has to go, because the ego will keep on bringing in reactions, and you will come out of the dialogue, right? And you go back to the discussion mode of analyzing. You will go into positive thinking. You're not looking for an answer about wiping fear away right now. You're just observing it. How do you observe it? Is what he is actually saying.
It's a fear. You will observe your own particular fear if you are interested, if you are serious. Because a mind that is frightened, knowingly or unknowingly, can try to meditate. Right? And that meditation only leads to further misery, further corruption. Because the mind that's frightened can never see what is true. Right? So we are going to find out, to get, if it is possible, to be totally, completely be free of fear in all its depth, right? Now we are undertaking a job which demands a very careful observation. To observe one's own fear. And how you observe that fear is all important. Right, when you go on, how do you observe the fear? Is it a fear that you have remembered, and so recall it and then look at it? Or is it a fear that you have had no time to observe and therefore is still there? Or the mind is unwilling to look at fear. You follow? I wonder if you come. So which is it that is actually happening? Unwilling to look, unwilling to observe one's own fears, because most of us do not know how to resolve. Either we escape, run away, or one thinks to analyze, thinking thereby we'll get rid of it. But the fear is still there. So it's important to find out how you look at that fear. Right? How do you observe fear? Right, now you're finished with it, now let's come back. How do you observe fear? This is not a silly question, because either you observe it after it has happened, or you observe it as it is happening. Right? For most of us, the observation takes place after it has happened. Right? Now we are asking whether it is possible to observe fear as it arises. Right? You are threatened by another belief, a belief that you hold very strongly, you are threatened about it. There is fear in it, right? Now, I'm challenging you now. You have certain beliefs, certain experience, certain opinions, judgments, evaluations, and so on. When one is challenging them, there is either a resistance, building a wall against it, or you are doubtful whether you're going to be attacked, and so fear arises. Now, can you observe that fear as it arises? Right? Come on, sirs. Right? You follow what I'm saying? Will you do it? Are you doing it? Now, how do you observe that fear? The word, the recognition of the response, which you call fear, because you have had that fear previously, the memory of it is stored up, and when the fear arises, you say, recognize. Right? So, you are not observing, but recognizing. I want you to see this. Huh? So, recognition doesn't free the mind from fear. It only strengthens the fear. Whereas, if you are able to observe as it arises, then there are two factors taking place in it. One, that you are different from that fear, right? And so you can operate on that fear, control it, chase it away, rationalize it, and so on. That is you doing something about that fear, right? That's the way we generally observe. In that, there is a division, the me and the fear. So there is conflict in that division, right? Whereas if you observe that fear is you, you are not different from that fear. I wonder if you get this. This is really, if you once grasp the principle of this, that the observer is the observed, that the person who says, I am observing, then he is separating himself from that which he is observing, whereas the fact is, the observer is that fear. Therefore, there is no division between the observer and the fear. Right? That's a fact.
So do we want to discuss this?
Therefore, there is no division between the
Let's look at this recognition thing. Is that clear? The recognition is.
Excuse me, nothing is clear.
Yeah.
You're in a shopping centre,
Yeah.
there's an incident, people are falling down, there's blood. I mean, you would feel, quite rightly, fear. And then you would take corrective action. So you need fear based on common sense and also your innateness to survive. and that's a good, healthy fear. So I try to make a distinction between imaginary fears or what's going to happen tomorrow or whatever, or something that is a reality as I see it. I get away from the drunk or from crazy people, whatever.
Exactly.
He's talking from he's an enlightened man, and he's sort of up there, and the way he would view fear is very different from how I would view fear. I would try and make, as I said, a distinction between healthy fears and other kinds of fears. But as I say, well, that might be. And so, how do you relate, like a crazy person coming at you with a knife, that you are the fear?
No, hold on. So, when you see a snake, he's not talking about that fear at all. You have to step back. When you see a drunk man, you step back. He's not talking about that fear. We are taking it to the psychological world too. And we are thinking like somebody is actually hurting us. It's the psychological fear he's talking about. The fear that we come up with our thoughts and reactions, right, which is different from the actual fear. The physical fear that happens, you have to step back. When you are near the end of the mountain, you need to step back. Right? That is your reality. He's not talking about that. Psychological fear, psychological time is what he's talking
But I don't understand, in the past, if you've got some fear that's created, and using his philosophy, it doesn't work help at all.
It doesn't. It doesn't. See, this is what he's talking about. He is asking you to think about it yourself. He's not giving a technique or process here, or about the observer or the observed. He's saying all of us are frightened to look at fear. We want to look at pleasure, we will go for it. If somebody is actually praising me, I like it. But when somebody is abusing, then I go to the image first. Like rather than what Krishnamurti is asking, don't go to the image. Because you should, even when somebody is abusing you or calling me stupid, I should be able to look at it and see that the image, it is the image that is actually causing me to have a reaction rather than listening to the person who is trying to convey something.
So it's about not learning how to not react to fear.
Yes.
But you can have a point. You are in the circumstantial
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
When you have to defend yourself physically.
Yeah.
Is there no psychological fear in that moment?
No, there's no psychological fear.
So when someone attacks you, there is
No, that's physical. You need to move away. When a snake comes, you need to move away. All of that is different from what he's talking.
That's all you are doing, moving away. There is no psychological.
No, there's no psychological because that is the what is at that point, right? In that present moment, I mean, you don't have time to look at the observer or the observed because this is going to attack immediately. You don't have time for thoughts anymore, right?
Yeah, sorry, there was an example there, it's Eckhart Tolle, however it is. He talks about a deer. So a deer's like, it's in the rainforest where it is, and then it hears like something creak or snap, and it like spikes its attention to what's actually happening in the situation and realizes there's a predator coming towards it. Doesn't think about it, it just runs. It's not a psychological thing, it's just a flight mechanism, which is not, it's not an emotional response. It's not like, I'm going to run from this predator's Barry and he's cool, so I'm going to stay here
You
and
don't
get
have
it.
time to analyze.
It's not, it's an unanalytical, it's a instinctual response, perfect. But then he was saying that once the deer runs and creates space from the predator and the predator's no longer there, the threat's no longer there, he just starts eating grass again. He doesn't go, oh my god, that was so close this time, oh, like next time I go to eat, there might be something in the woods, and then it's just sitting there.
We have consciousness.
Correct.
So we have emotions all the time.
But what
It's
about,
impossible to do without
what
emotions.
about another
Yeah, I'll let him ask
I
him
was just
later.
going to offer a way of looking at it that you could consider it a difference between reactive and responsive fear.
The reactive isn't really fear, but for the sake of the conversation, you could say it's fear. But it's a reactive response that isn't a conditioned response. It's either ingrained as a survival mechanism, like flight or fight response, and then everything else that's a conditioned response is from conditioning, from socialization, and various other things that we learn, including identifying with an identity and all of those things. That's going to be a completely different type of thing, and that's what Krishnamurti seems to be referring to, the ego and identity and fear around engaging with those responses or reactions to encroachments on the identity.
You go. I'm going.
Well, two things. If you have fear about, say, a decision, a big decision, whether you retire or whether you go to a doctor or whatever, how do you decide that if you've got fear in the first place?
So why are you going to the doctor? Right? You have a toothache, you have to go to the dentist, get a prescription, get the root canal done. It has nothing to do with psychological thing at all.
There is, because you've got past history on that.
Okay. See, what he's saying is don't bring that in. If you have a toothache, go fix it. Don't look at that image of the past at all.
But
You're wasting
it's
time.
there. Even if you want to not look at it, it still comes out.
Yeah, then be
You
aware.
have it.
So are you going to suffer the pain? You will go to the doctor anyway, right? Because the toothache is actually hurting you, right? You need to fix it with something. Right? It is up to you. If it's not, the pain is something that you can bear. It's the reality of the situation, right? See, whatever everybody's talking about, the power of now, it is not glamorous at all. The what is boring. What is that I am angry, I am here trying to do a presentation here, trying to explain, wiping fear away. That is my what is right now. That is my reality, nothing else. Right? And your reality in that situation is you have pain. You have nothing else. So why worry? See, if you have enough pain, you will run to the dentist anyway. You wouldn't think about all of this. You're able to think about that thing because you can suffer that pain. And he's asking you not to go there. Why waste time on all those things? If you have fear, if you have pain, just fix it. If you can bear it, bear it.
I think the most fascinating thing that he said so far is you become
Think
the
about it yourself. Think about it
You
yourself. Yeah.
become the fear. Because it's not only assuming, you become the
Yeah,
fear.
but one person will worry about something which another person will never worry about.
Exactly.
So it does definitely come from the past,
Yes.
from the habit of doing something from the past. Definitely.
Keep on looking at it yourself.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, so I'm going to get into the next video in which I'm doing that. So is there something else? So see, did you see the conflict in the division between the observer and the observed? It is trying to look at a psychological fear of not going to the dentist, right, or anything else, rather than just doing it, right? And the psychological thing is coming because of the image of that pain from before, right? Saying that I can overcome it, I don't need to go to the dentist. And that is the conflict that is creating the division.
Well, doesn't psychological fear also include your ego
Exactly.
and also personality?
Yes.
What type of,
Yes.
for example, in the innogram, what type of personality you have,
Yeah.
which is a major factor in how you behave in everyday life.
Exactly. And see, so what we live, where we live is, rather than live in this now moment, we are here. We are here, we create a circle. We create a circle here. We are here, we create a circle of all these images and we live here. We create the ego. We remember here. And that's what Krishnamurti is saying, that's where the conflict is. We create with the images, with the memories, with these things, we are always here, away from the what is. And that is why, see, so one looks at the wife, not based on what he's observing right now. He's observing the images that he had in the last 20 years or 15 years. So he he's actually working with the concept of the wife. I look at my friend, it could be the concept that I'm looking at. So what he's asking is not to look at the concept, not to look at those ideas and memories. Look at each person when you see him with freshness. Don't store all those images about your wife, about your friend here. Right? But all of us are here. We just create the center here of ego. We create these images, we keep on getting hurt. He is saying, at least look at this. Then, if you look at it, then you can have more moments of now, in which you realize that the observer is the observed, right? And then you don't have conflict there. Is that clear, or any other questions on that one? We'll go to the next one because we are running out of time.
I think the microphone might still be on.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, the one on the table, I think.
Oh, this one. Ah, it's this one. Yeah, it's this
Part of the brain, part of the mind, and brain. Sensation. Right? Part of the brain, part of the mind and brain is sensation. Right? But the moment you name a particular sensation by a particular name, you've already created the response according to your condition. My conditioning, suppose a person's conditioning is he's anti-communist. And he's trained, he's educated to be anti. Arab anti-Jew, anti-this. So, you respond according to that condition. And that part of the conditioning is the association of the word with the thing. Never realizing the word is not the thing. Now, the word fear is not the feeling. So you have only that feeling left. That feeling, that sensation is part of the brain, part of the mind. To observe that feeling with all your senses. Then you will see, if you do it, not theorize about it, not speculate about it, but actually do it, then you will see that fear, which is the movement of thought, which is the movement of thought as the word ceases. Have you understood all this?
No.
Then, psychologically, when one is free of fear, actually, then on the physical instrument. You understand my question? If you are not frightened of any danger psychologically, what effect has that depth of the realization of truth on the physical? If you are free of that fear now, what effect has it on your physical state? You know, the psychological fears dominate the physical. That's obvious. Therefore, the body, the instrument, or this organism, loses its own intelligence. You know? If the fears of the psyche are constantly in operation, as with most people, then there is a tremendous strain on the organism. It's frightened, it's nervous, it's always apprehensive, always guarding itself, never open. So, those psychological fears affect very deeply on the physical organism. And the inner affects the outer, and therefore its own native intelligence of the body is being destroyed. As you destroy the organism through the pleasure of a taste, smoking, drinking, drugs, eating a lot of meat, you know, the rest of it goes on. Because you are trained, you are educated along these lines. Therefore, that's always destroying the deep organic intelligence. So, when there is no fear inwardly, the organism operates with its own intelligence. Therefore, it is quite a different operation. You understand? Nothing is dictated to it. So too, you must lay the foundation of all this. But then only you will understand later on when we discuss about meditation what's implied in it. But if you don't lay the foundation, which is not to be psychologically inwardly psychologically afraid, and if you are afraid and you are still go after meditation, then you're caught up in illusions, in stupidities, in absurd activities. At the root, the essence of destructive activity goes on, and you pile on it all kinds of idiotic ideas. Meditation is something that you have to, that comes naturally when you have laid down the foundation. Right? So, what we are talking about and having a dialogue is laying the foundation, not only biological foundation, but psychological foundation. When that foundation is deep, strong, healthy, safe, then meditation then becomes something extraordinary. But if without that, meditation becomes rather childish, meaningless, leading to illusion.
This is it.
When you have laid down the foundation.
Anybody want to take a look at it? Yeah, perfect.
Well, we design, I believe, to actually feel fear. And I think it's good when I feel fear, when I'm nervous, anxious, then, because I'm feeling it, I can say, hang on, what's happening here? It alerts me that I need to do something about this fear, to look at it, to see what I can do to allay the fear. And I need that fear because that's what my body needs. And well, what he's saying about, the psychological thing, it does affect you very much, but it's a step towards not affecting the body by having all this already. And you need to recognise that you have this fear. And the only way I can do it is actually to feel it, feel distracted, etc., etc. But I keep thinking, well, he's on a different plane, and I feel the fear.
See, he's only asking you to look at how you look at operation of your mind, your senses, right? And if you're doing it the right way, he's just asking you to be aware of it, right?
Yeah, but things are not stopping at the rationalization of fear, which Lydia is talking about. She tries to rationalize, which is a leader, an exercise. But
This is not
it's
easy.
not enough. Krishnamurti goes further.
Yeah.
It's not by rationalization.
No, not by rationalization. This is not easy. What he is talking about is everybody's problem, right? It's just not mine. And you can't build a technique or a process for this. Because the process will actually strengthen the me that we are creating in the observer. This is not a self-help routine. Because that is how our education is. We are looking at to improve ourselves. This won't work that way. Because anything that you do with a process or a technique like mindfulness meditation will strengthen the self and the ego. This is a common problem for all of us, and we need to get together to look at it. And when you bring in the self, it won't work. Right? Because the strength is getting strengthened and you are here. And you can only be here in more of those movements when the self is less. Right? And then you realize that you are part of the undivided whole, right? Because here you have created a space about yourself as you are an important person with an ego. And what Krishnamurti is saying, we need to realize that we are all together in this. This is a common problem for all of us. We need to look at it together, that we are all parts of the undivided whole, and if we are here, we don't have this space and ego. So more you look at it and more you are there in this now moments, right? At that moment you will have more peace, more blissful, you don't need meditation then, right? At least if you are aware of that. And it's not easy. Right? He's not saying this is easy. There is all conflict, and that is why we are having wars and things like that.
I get a sense also that he's also, in a sense, saying it's not hard either, because we're also doing it in many respects automatically.
Yeah.
Like this, the lady made a really excellent point, which is fear is an indication. It's something that brings attention to you and that you can observe. The moment you are aware of a problem, it's already the beginning of the end of the problem. So thinking that we need to do more than just cognize or notice that we feel fear may be kind of misleading, but all we need to do is exactly that. Just notice, we feel the fear, and already it's the beginning of the end of the fear.
And you don't look at it one fear at a time. Understand the observer and the observed. Understand that this is not a problem for just one of us. We need to understand that we are part of the whole consciousness. We are the world, we are the society. We have created this education system, and if we individually change, radically change ourselves to live more in that whole, our society would also change. And that is what he's talking about. This is not for me to improve. This is for all of us to recognize that fact that our society is broken now. We have suffering. Let's change together so that we can change the society and the education system. We will have less wars, right? And that is the whole message. Once you know that, you would actually change. You would be stepping out and doing something. But before that, you need to find that in yourself. Because once you have that, you will feel the responsibility to do it. Right? And it is not for yourself. It's for the whole world that you are doing it.
I don't understand how it's real challenging usually comes to spiritual groups all the way to realization and enlightenment is through meditation. He's saying, what's the point of meditating if you haven't got a foundation? So, I mean, real challenge. I can't believe he's saying that.
He's saying true meditation is being aware. If you are aware, the meditation just comes. The nature takes care of you. Because when you're there, you will actually realize that what you're seeing as something, as illusion, there is nothing there. Because you're actually looking at it from an observer perspective, and you're seeing something there, the illusion in the observer. But when if you look at it clearly, you will see that there is nothing there. And in that nothing there is power. And power is because the nature then takes care of you. And then that is meditation that he's talking about. And it is not easy to understand, but that is what it is. And but
How can there be nothing there if there is something there?
exactly, right? So I'll get into it in the next session. We are running out of time. So that to go into there. See, I'll give you one example. Okay. So when I'm actually working in an office, I'm so consumed with all things. I don't focus on anything else, I just get my work done, right? Then when I step out of it, this is all things, then I go to nothing. I feel this, okay, I go into meditation, right? I have this technique of meditation. Then I feel that I'm nihilistic. I got this nothing, I concentrated on something. He's not talking about that thing, nothing. He's talking about no thing. Where you realize that it's all empty. The self is something that you've created on it. It's an illusion that you've created. So what you have created here is an illusion from your memories. It is not existing. He's saying you will see that it is empty when you look at it. Right? And then you come back here, when you are here, you will see that this is empty. Everything is empty. And what we are just calling that as different things. Right? So there's no thing. So you've actually gone from all things to nothing, that realistic thing, right? That is where all we talk about meditation. We look at concentrating something, we get into this illusion, blissful state. That is not the real thing. That is also something that the mind is creating around you from here itself. When it is no thing, then only it is there. When it's completely empty. But then we don't want to be empty, right? We want our mind to be occupied with all the thoughts, right? And we always go back to the all things or the nothing state because we don't know. We are afraid to stay here because this is an ordinary state. This is, I have toothache, I am angry. Here it is boring, there is no reaction, no thoughts. So what I come here because I like thoughts, I like reactions, I like to go into the film world. But see, all of us are actually here first. We had this natural state where we didn't have all of these problems. We actually lost that wisdom. Our ancestors lost it. And so because we actually enjoyed being here, watching the film, watching the reactions, watching the wars, having discussions rather than dialogues, we come here. Because we are lonely here. But in that loneliness, nature takes care of you. In that loneliness is real meditation. In that loneliness is real happiness, where there is no conflict between the observer and the observed.
So, when you said meditation comes naturally, well, I had a great issue with that. Meditation does not come naturally. Meditation is very hard work, requiring a lot of discipline. And so, this seems to go from, he's talking at level 401, whereas I'm at level 101. So how can I jump from 101 to 401?
We'll go into it in February. We'll have sessions to look at this, each one, like meditation. Let me go to him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to sound controversial, but I have met people, as we all have, that have, they seem to have the attributes of someone that is enlightened. They don't meditate because their life is a meditation. Everything they do, when they go to Woolies, or when they're washing their car, when they're angry, it's all a meditation. So, you know, you don't have to be sitting on necessarily, and Krishnamurti hates sitting on he says it, he doesn't like sitting on his riser. He doesn't like it. So he's even saying, put me, Krishnamurti, put me into that circle as well. Put all of it in. So even your belief in him or disbelief, put everything in the circle, and then ask the question why. So it's like if you're fearful that you're going to lose your job or not make money or not be able to do something, the question, ask yourself why. Well, because let's say it's an experience you had when you were a child, and you were taught to do that, do all these things. And the question is, well, why is that important to me? Why is it important to have that thing that you want? Why is the job important? Well, because if I don't have the job, it's okay. Well, why isn't that important? Because then this will happen. And just keep asking the why. And the why.
This is in the center. It's rationalization where you could go to move from that center.
Yeah, but you gotta go. You move from it by going into it, because if you still have the fear, then you basically a person doesn't have. You're not alive. In the sense that
it's like saying you can
you're living in a fantasy.
You cannot feel the ego coming.
You're living in your own illusion.
You shouldn't.
Okay, so in a dialogue, we will actually let the conversations go on while the others are silent. You wouldn't break the conversation because you're actually learning. But here, because we're running out of time, I have to go there. Go ahead.
It's probably worth noting that I think Krishnamurti, because he had that education in India and in the UK, he's using the term meditation in a very classical English sense, which is like meditating or pondering, meditating on a thought. So, for example, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, that book, it's saying the thoughts on, or the ponderance on things, not a discipline of yoga, that type of meditation. So I think it might be worth clarifying that when he's talking about meditation, he's not talking about some extreme, Kundalini yoga type exercises where you're trying to raise all sorts of energy and open chakras and all of that. He's just talking about pondering and self-reflection, metacognition. That's all it is. It's that simple.
Self-reflection would be a much better word.
Absolutely.
We understand, and people do use meditation, I believe, in the wrong sense, not in the classical sense of, breathing a mantra, but thinking about or concentrating on a subject or matter.
Exactly.
And that would help, because that would then be at 101 level that I can understand.
Yeah.
And then you move, up.
And the gentleman behind me made an excellent point that, when you're doing certain activities and you're in a meditative state, that self-reflecting state where you're giving yourself a little bit of space between the activity and your cognition, your thoughts, that's that pondering, the meditation that he's referring to.
Well, I accept meditative state, which is a good word, but it's not meditation, but it makes sense in the sense of considering deeply, what you just said. Yeah, but that's clarification for me, and then you can kind of work your way up to 401 and understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So when I phase out as a poet, that's maintained.
Well, no, when you're phasing out, you're going into a auto-suggestion or suggestive state. You're going into a hypnosis. So when you're suggestible, it's when you're in a bit of a trance and you're kind of lucid or daydreaming. That's not necessarily self-reflective. Self-reflection does require like a bit of intention, where you're actually paying attention to what's going on in your internal world, as opposed to your guard is down and everything's just going straight into your brain and your mind, and there's no filter.
Let me just step in. So what we do in this Krishnamurti dialogue that we have every week is we go into each of these topics. People listen, people talk, right? The whole goal is to understand how the operation of the mind and the senses, and it's not easy to understand because we've not been educated about this. Right? If we were young and if we were taught this, we would have been able to do this, right? So we've been conditioned, right? So that's why it is difficult, right? So it take time, right? But when you have it, it is actually, when you see it, it is actually instantaneous, right? So that's why we stop the conversation. Stephen, go ahead, Stephen.
I just heard Krishnamurti define meditation as questioning.
Huh?
In one of these recordings, he defined meditation as questioning.
Exactly. Yes. Meditation is questioning. Yeah. That is another topic we'll go into February. We will have these sessions, but I invite you to the Krishnamurti Foundation dialogues. You can type in Krishnamurti Foundation Australia. You can join us on Tuesdays, Saturdays. There are around 4 or 5 dialogues every week around the world. People join in Zoom and you can have conversation with us. Right, and we'll explain more because it's a continuous thing. People have been there for like 10, 15 years, 20 years, they haven't figured it out yet. So you have to be patient on this, right? Because it is all patience. Go ahead, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, well, let's thank Paul. As we wind up, just a few things. We are looking for volunteers in our various operations, and if you're interested, please names out front. We have a book launch coming up on the 29th. That's at 12:30. That's next Friday on the Fairy Points of Ireland. And we have an Alternative Energies Festival on the 7th, which is tarot readings and all the major things you can come and do and so on. And we have a celebration called the 9 Days of Christmas starting the 5th of December. In the bookshop every day there'll be something different going on. And finally on the 2nd, on Monday, there's the new moon ceremony at 6:30. So you're welcome to come and get involved in any of those. So thank you all for coming.
Please join for sessions that I'm planning on February, March. Join the dialogue. Yeah. February, March. I don't have dates.
Next
Thank you.